The selection of a partner by a Xylosian war beast was a tradition steeped in honor. For generations, the greatest warriors of the Kaha Dominion presented their best cadets, each one a specimen of physical perfection, hoping to be chosen. Everyone knew the drill: the beast chooses the strongest, the most dominant, the future alpha of the pack. So when the legendary beast, Vorlag, knelt before a human, the weakest cadet in the Academy's history, the silence wasn't just silence. It was the sound of an entire civilization holding its breath, watching its most sacred tradition get utterly shattered. The Great Hall of the Kaha Primus Academy was basically a temple to warriors. Its obsidian walls were carved with the names of legendary bonded pairs, names that meant victory. High above, holographic banners showed off famous battles where a warrior and their beast fought as one. Today was the day of bonding, the most important day on the Kaha calendar. Down in the center of the massive room stood a line of cadets, the product of a decade of ruthless training. You had Drachna, with scales that shimmered like metal. You had Lycarians, their furry bodies practically vibrating with predatory energy. Every single one was a living weapon, their hearts pounding with the hope of being chosen. And then there was Cadet Alex Ryder. He was the odd one out. The experiment, the human. Alex was part of some new interspecies exchange program, a diplomatic handshake from the Terran Alliance. He was shorter, softer, and a whole lot slower than anyone else in the hall. He didn't have natural armor or claws or crazy enhanced senses. In the Kaha's world, where power is everything, he was a big, fat zero. His being here at all was just a formality, a polite nod to avoid a political mess. He knew it. The instructors knew it. Every cadet who towered over him knew it. Alex's only goal for the day was to be a ghost in a hall of titans. He just stared at the floor, waiting for it all to be over. At the far end of the hall, the huge stone gates rumbled open. A shadow fell over the cadets, and a presence washed over the room so ancient and immense it felt like gravity had just cranked itself up. Vorlag entered. The Xylosian war beast was something straight out of a nightmare. It was bigger than any three cadets put together, a walking collection of muscle, armor, and razor-sharp claws. Its fur was the color of a storm at midnight, and its 6 eyes glowed with the cold, smart light of distant stars. This wasn't just an animal. It was a thinking being with immense power, a creature whose kind had formed the very bedrock of the Kaha Empire. The High Commander, a grizzled old Drachna, struck his ceremonial staff against the floor. The boom echoed through the hall. "The Crucible has forged you," his voice rasped. "You are the sharpest blades in the Dominion's arsenal. Today, one of you will be granted the highest honor, the right to stand beside Vorlag, to become one. Show your strength, show your spirit, show your worth." Moving with a silent grace that just didn't seem possible for its size, Vorlag began to move. It glided down the line, its huge head low, as it checked out the candidates. The air grew thick with a mix of ambition, fear, and something that smelled like ozone. The beast paused at the first cadet, a hulking Lycarian champion named Rykor. Vorlag sniffed, a long, slow inhale that seemed to strip back every layer of Rykor's being: his genetics, his training, his very soul. Rykor trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer force of the beast's presence. After a moment, Vorlag let out a low growl of acknowledgement, and moved on. One by one, it passed the cadets. It nodded at a silent, stone-faced Grawn, and huffed dismissively at a preening of Ike. The tension in the hall just got tighter and tighter with every step the beast took. Finally, Vorlag stopped in front of him. Kalen, a pure-blooded Drachna. Kalen was the top of his class, and he knew it. His scales were the color of obsidian, his muscles were coiled pythons, and his arrogance was as sharp as his claws. He'd aced every trial, smashed every record, and broken every opponent. To everyone here, this was a done deal. This was Kalen's day. Vorlag circled him slowly, its 6 glowing eyes scanning Kalen from head to toe. Kalen didn't even flinch. He stood tall, chin up, radiating confidence. He was born for this. The beast's head, big enough to swallow him whole, drew level with the Drachna's chest. It inhaled deeply. The hall was completely silent. This was it. The big moment. A faint, triumphant smirk started to form on Kalen's lips. He'd won. Then Vorlag let out a short, sharp snort. It wasn't a sound of respect or aggression. It was a sound of complete and total dismissal. A puff of hot air ruffled the sash on Kalen's chest, and then it just walked away. Kayleen's smirk froze and shattered into a mask of pure disbelief. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. What was happening? The beast had just insulted the most promising cadet in a generation. Vorlag just kept walking, ignoring the shockwaves spreading through the hall. It passed the last few cadets, all fierce, powerful warriors who now just looked confused with barely a glance. Its pace was steady, deliberate, like it was being pulled toward a specific spot. And with every step the beast took, the focus of the entire hall shifted further and further down the line, toward the very end. Toward the shadow at the edge of the ceremony, toward the human. Alex felt the shift before he saw it. The weight of thousands of eyes suddenly landed on him. He'd been so focused on being invisible that he hadn't even noticed the beast's approach. He looked up, his heart immediately trying to beat its way out of his chest. The war beast, the living legend, was walking right toward him. It passed the last cadet without even slowing down. There was no one else left. Just him. Panic shot through him. This had to be a mistake. A joke, right? He was nothing. A diplomatic placeholder. His muscles were noodles next to their steel. But there was no mistaking it. The colossal creature came to a stop directly in front of him, its shadow swallowing him whole. For the first time, Alex was close enough to see the ancient intelligence swirling in its 6 glowing eyes, like galaxies of knowledge. The silence in the hall wasn't just quiet anymore. It was a physical pressure, a crushing void. The universe held its breath. A legendary creature of war, a symbol of ultimate power, stood before the one being in the galaxy who was its complete opposite. And while we wait to see what happens next, if you're enjoying this story, stories like this are why we do what we do. Your support lets us keep exploring these worlds. Now, back to the ceremony that was about to change everything. Vorlag lowered its massive head until its snout was just inches from Alex's chest. Alex flinched, he couldn't help it, but he held his ground, his training kicking in just enough to keep his legs from turning to jelly. The beast inhaled, but this wasn't the dismissive snort it gave Kaylin. This was a deep, slow, thoughtful breath. It was the sound of a scholar turning a page in a forgotten book. It was a sniff of curiosity, of recognition, of something it hadn't expected to find. Then, the unthinkable happened. The ground trembled as the Xylosian war beast, a creature that had never bowed to an emperor, began to move. Its powerful forelegs bent. Its armored body descended. With impossible grace, Vorlag lowered itself to the obsidian floor. It sat right there in front of the human. It curled its massive tail around its body, fixed all 6 of its glowing eyes on Alex Rider, and just waited. The silence shattered. A roar of outrage erupted from the line of cadets. Insolence! Kaylin bellowed, his voice cracking with rage. This is a mockery. The human is weak. He is prey. Other cadets joined in, a mess of confusion and anger. They'd been cheated. Their entire lives had been a climb to this one moment, only to watch a demigod ignore them for a footnote. The High Commander took a step forward, his face a storm of conflict, his mouth open to shout a command. But no sound came out. Vorlag didn't even twitch. It ignored the uproar like it was just FLI's buzzing. Its focus was entirely on Alex. And then a voice echoed. Not in the air, but inside every mind in the hall. It was low and rumbling, ancient and powerful, like continents grinding together. It was Vorlag. The pack seeks a claw. The voice resonated. It needs a mind. The pack values a roar. It has forgotten the heart. The telepathic words washed over the hall, killing the protests instantly. The sheer power behind it was overwhelming, forcing everyone into a state of stunned submission. Vorlag's gaze seemed to soften as it focused again on the terrified human. The next thought it sent was just for Alex, but the feeling behind it rippled through the minds of everyone else. You smell of quiet resolve, the beast thought, its voice in Alex's mind now gentle, curious. Of selfless courage. You smell of the lone wolf who protects the flock, not for glory, but because it is right. Others see weakness. I see a foundation that will not break, a strength they can't possibly comprehend. Having made its point, Vorlag broadened its psychic voice again, booming into the consciousness of every single person in the hall. The declaration it made would be carved into history forever. For 10,000 cycles, you have chosen alphas of strength. You have sought the blade that strikes hardest. Your empire is cracking under the weight of its own aggression. Today, I do not choose a weapon. The beast paused, letting the words sink in. Today, I choose a handler. I choose an alpha of will. He will not lead you into battle. He will lead you through it. It was a truth so obvious, they'd all missed it. For generations, the Kaha had been breeding the perfect weapon, but they'd forgotten to cultivate the perfect leader. Vorlag, who had seen empires rise and fall, didn't need another attack dog. It needed a partner. Suddenly, the High Commander remembered things he'd dismissed. Reports of Cadet Ryder in the med bay reading technical manuals to a damaged maintenance drone just to keep it company. Of Ryder stepping between Kalen and a terrified young recruit, not with a challenge, but with a perfectly quoted rule from the Kaha Code of Conduct, forcing the bully to stand down without a single punch thrown. The time a barracks air filter failed, and while the other cadets fought, Alex had quietly spent the night fixing it, restoring clean air for everyone, who never even knew who to thank. These weren't the actions of a warrior. They weren't glorious. They were acts of empathy, of intelligence, of duty done without needing a pat on the back. They were, in their own quiet way, acts of profound strength. The strength to build instead of break. The beast didn't need a sharper claw. It needed a calmer mind. It needed a conscience. The ceremony ended, not with a roar of approval, but in a heavy, thoughtful silence. The High Commander looked at Alex and no longer saw a weak human, but the blueprint for a new future. Kalen and the others stared at their unlikely new alpha, their faces a mess of hatred, jealousy, and a disturbing new flicker of doubt. For the first time, they had to wonder if everything they knew about power was wrong. Trembling, but with a new resolve hardening in his chest, Alex stepped forward. He reached out and placed a hand on Vorlag's massive brow. The contact sent a jolt through him, not of electricity, but of pure information, ancient memories, and a deep, abiding loneliness finally being healed. In response, the great war beast let out a low, rumbling purr, a sound that vibrated through the very foundations of the academy. The old way was broken. A new bond had been forged, not in fire, but in a moment of quiet understanding. The partnership between the human and the war beast wouldn't be one of master and weapon, but of two minds and two hearts. A new era for the Kaha Dominion had just begun. The only question was, how would a pack of killers adapt to a leader who won not with his fists, but with his humanity?